to read today? What have we got here? The London Eye Mystery by Siobhan Dowd. I don't know how much of this I'm going to read. We'll see. But let's get going. So I just looked at the book and I reckon we'll be able to read 2 chapters. A giant bicycle wheel in the sky. My favourite thing to do in London is to fly the Eye. On a clear day you can see for 25 miles in all directions because you are the largest observation wheel ever built. You are sealed into one of the 32 capsules with the strangers who were next to you in the queue, and when they close the doors the sound of the city is cut off. You begin to rise. The capsules are made of glass and steel and are hung from the rim of the wheel. As the wheel turns, the capsules use the force of gravity to stay upright. It takes 30 minutes to go a full circle. From the top of the ride, Kat says London looks like a toy town, and the cars on the roads below looks like abacus beads going left and right and stopping and starting. I think London looks like London, and the cars like cars, only smaller. The best thing to see from up there is the River Thames. You can see how it loops and curves, but when you are on the ground you think it is straight. The next best thing to look at is the spokes and metallic hawsers of the Eye itself. You are looking at the only cantilevered structure of its kind on Earth. It is designed like a giant bicycle wheel in the sky, supported by a massive A-frame. It is also interesting to watch the capsules on either side of you. You see strangers looking out, just like you are doing. The capsule that is higher than yours becomes lower than yours, and the capsule that is lower becomes higher. You have to shut your eyes because it makes a strange feeling go up your esophagus. You are glad the movement is smooth and slow, and the capsule goes lower, and you are sad because you do not want the ride to end. You would like to go around one more time, but it's not allowed, so you get out feeling like an astronaut coming down from space a little lighter than you were. We took Salem to the Eye because he'd never been up before. A stranger came up to us in the queue offering us a free ticket. We took it and gave it to Salem. We shouldn't have done this, but we did. He went up on his own at 11:32, 24th May, and was due to come down at 12:02 the same day. He turned and waved to Kat and me as he boarded, but you couldn't see his face, just his shadow. They sealed him in with 20 other people whom we didn't know. Kat and I tracked Salem's capsule as it made its orbit. When it reached its current point, we both said, "Now!" At the same time, and Kat laughed. At the same time, and Kat laughed and I joined in. That's how we knew we'd been tracking the right one. We saw the people bunch up as the capsule came back down, facing northeast towards the automatic camera for the souvenir photograph. They were just dark bits of jackets, legs, dresses and sleeves. Then the capsule landed. The doors opened and the passengers came out in 2s and 3s. They walked off in different directions. Their faces were smiling. Their paths probably never crossed again, but Salem wasn't among them. We waited for the next capsule, and the next, and the one after that. He still didn't appear. Somewhere, somehow, in the 30 minutes of riding the Eye, in his sealed capsule, he had vanished off the face of the earth. This is how having a funny brain that runs on a different operating system from other people's helps me to figure out what had happened. Chapter 2. News of a Hurricane. It started the day the letter from Aunt Gloria arrived. Aunt Gloria's mum's sister. Mum calls her Glo and Kat calls her Auntie Glo. Dad calls her Hurricane Gloria because he says she leaves a trail of devastation in her wake. And I asked him what this meant. Did it mean she was clumsy like I am? He said it wasn't so much things that she upset, which wouldn't be so bad, more people and emotions. Does that mean she is evil? I asked. Dad said she didn't do it on purpose. So no, she wasn't evil. She was just a handful. I asked him what being a handful meant. He said it meant being larger than life. When I tried to ask what being larger in life meant, he put a hand on my shoulder. Not now, Ted, he said. The morning Aunt Gloria's letter came was the same as any other. I heard the post drop as usual on the doormat. I was on Shreddy number 3, and the radio weather forecast was saying it was set fair, but with a risk of showers in the southeast. Kat was eating toast standing up, wriggling. It wasn't that she had fleas, although that's what it looked like. She was listening to her weirdo music on headphones, which meant she wouldn't hear the weather, and wouldn't wear a raincoat or bring her umbrella to school, which meant she would get wet, and I wouldn't, and this was good. Dad was hopping around in one sock, complaining about how the washing machine had eaten all his socks, and he was late. Mum was looking through the laundry bag for a spare. Ted, get the post, Mum said. She was in her nurse's uniform, and even I know that when her words came out short and sharp like that, you do what she asks, even though I hate leaving my shreddies to turn to mush. I came back with 6 envelopes. Kat saw me and snatched them off me, and picked out a brown envelope and a small white one. I could see our school emblem on the white one. It's like a squashed up X. Over it is a bishop's hat, which is called a mitre. Kat tried to hide it behind the big brown envelope, but Mum saw her. Not so fast, Katrina, Mum says. When Mum calls Kat Katrina, you know that trouble is coming. Kat's lips pressed up tight. She handed over the post, all items except the brown envelope, which she held up for all to see. It was addressed to her, Katrina Spark. She opened it, and a catalogue came out. It was called Hair Flare. She walked over to the door, head nodding. I ate Shreddy's number 7 through 17. Dad started humming to the theme tune of Laurel and Hardy, his favourite thing to watch on TV. He'd got the other sock on and was buttering toast, and his hair stood on end, and Mum would have said he looked the spit of Stan. The spit is a way to say exactly like, but don't ask me why. Anyway, Stan has brown hair, and Dad's hair is fair, like mine, so he doesn't look exactly like Stan at all. Katrina! Mum bellowed. The 18th Shreddy fell off my spoon. What? This letter from your school? What letter from my school? This letter, the one you tried to hide. What about it? It says you were missing last week without a sick note, last Tuesday. Oh yeah. Well what? Where were you? She was AWOL, Mum, I suggested. Kat and Mum stared at me. AWOL, like in the army, I explained. Absent without leave. Get stuffed, you creep, Kat hissed. She went out and slammed the door after her. The radio program switched back to the news. Turn that thing off, Ted, Mum said. I fiddled with the knob, but she pulled the plug out the socket instead. There was silence. I heard Dad munching some toast. She's going off the rails, Ben, Mum said to Dad. Off the rails, I repeated. thinking of train accidents. I suppose Mum was saying something about Katrina being AWOL. Maybe off the rails was another way of saying skiving, which means not going to school when you should. But I didn't dare check, not with Mum in that mood. Off the rails and nobody cares, she said. I used to bunk off at her age, Dad said. I'd spend the day riding buses and smoking fags in the park. My 20th shreddy nearly went down the wrong way. The thought of Dad with a cigarette in his hand was very strange. He never smokes now. Dad tapped Mum's shoulder, and when she looked up at him, he kissed her on the middle of her forehead. It gave off a funny squeak that nearly put me off the rest of my shreddies. Let's discuss it tonight, Faith. I've got to run. There's a meeting about blowing up the barracks. Mum's lips went up a bit. Okay, love. Later. I should explain here that Dad is not a terrorist who goes around blowing up the places where soldiers lived. He is a demolition expert. And the barracks was the local name for Barrington Heights, the tallest tower block in our South London borough. It used to be where people who are socially excluded live. Being socially excluded is a bit like being excluded from school. Instead of a head teacher telling you you have to leave, it's more that everybody in the rest of society acts like you don't exist. And you end up with all the other people who are being ignored. And you're so angry that society is treating you like this, that you take drugs and shoplift and form gangs in revenge. The people in Barrington Heights used to do all those things. Dad said it was not that the people were bad to begin with. He said the building was sick and made them sick too, a bit like a virus. So he and the council had decided to move them to new homes and blow up the building and start again. Dad got his jacket on. He said, "Goodbye, Ted," to me and went out. Then Mum sat down again and went through the rest of the post. She got to the last piece, a pale lilac envelope. I saw her holding it to her nose and sniffing it, as if it was edible. Then she smiled. Her lips went right up, but her eyes watery. This meant she was sad and happy at the same time. "Glory be," she whispered. She opened it and read what was inside. I ate my last 3 shreddies, numbers 35 through 37. She put down the lilac sheet of paper and ruffled the top of my head, a thing she does sometimes which makes my hand shake itself out. "Hold tight, Ted," she said. "A hurricane's coming." "No, it isn't," I said. "We're moving into a large anticyclone. I'm a meteorologist. Or will be when I grow up. So I know. Hurricanes die out halfway across the Atlantic. They rarely hit Britain. Even the one in 1987 wasn't technically a hurricane. The weatherman, who called Michael Fish, who was famous for getting it wrong, actually got it right. It was only a bad storm, and it had no name. A real hurricane is always given a name, like Hannah, which gusted up to 160 miles an hour in 1957, or Hugo, which flattened half of South Carolina in the USA in 1989, or Hurricane Katrina, a Category 5 storm which devastated New Orleans in 2005. I'm sure it was no coincidence that one of the most catastrophic storms of all time has the same name as my sister. I don't mean it literally, Mum said, whisking my empty cereal bowl away from me. It's Hurricane Gloria who's on the way. My sister, remember? She's coming to visit us, along with her son, Salem. The ones who live in Manchester? That's right, it's been more than 5 years since we saw them, Ted. I just don't know where the time's gone. It sounded like she thought time was something that comes and goes like the weather. Sorry about that. It sounded like she thought time was something that comes and goes like the weather. I shook my head. No, Mum, I explained. Time doesn't go anywhere. It does in this house, Ted. Down a bloody black hole. I blinked at her, trying to figure out if she might have a point. She laughed and said she was joking and rustled my hair again. Go on, Ted. Off to school with you. So I went on my zigzag way across the common, thinking about time, black holes, Einstein's theory of relativity and storm warnings. I imagined Hurricane Gloria building up force as it drew nearer, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. My thoughts were so good that I nearly ended up walking into the pond on the wrong side of the common and got to school only just on time. Down a black hole, I said to myself as I ran across the playground. My hand shook itself out. Down a bloody black hole. So that's all we're going to read. So it's called The London Eye Mystery by Siobhan Dowd. A really good book. Not too long. Only about 322 pages. Well, at least for the version that I've got. Set in London, obviously. It's a really good read. I've read this one. But if you have any suggestions for other books you want me to read, or if you want me to finish books or stuff, do go comment it. But anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.